Good.
Here we go. Okay, we're going to start from Daf Nun Beis Amud Sheni, Nun Beis Amud Aleph, about 3 lines from the top. Amar of Nasan. Just to remind you, remember the Kohen Gadol walks in to this area over here. This area, by the way, has 40 amas. Right over here is 40 amas. And then you go here. I just want to point out that we learned yesterday that Rabbi Meir, the opinion of the Mishnah is that you walked, even the way the Kohen Gadol walked, he walked between the menorah and the Mizbeach. That was the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And then he walked in between the 2 curtains that landed him on the north side in the Kodesh Kodashim. So that was Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. And then you had Rabbi Yossi's opinion, which was this on the side, which you walk straight through. There was only 1 curtain, and you walk straight through right into the back in the Kodesh Kodashim. And then you have the intermediate position. Hold on, Lewis is joining. Hi, Lewis. How are you?
Hi.
Okay, we didn't even begin. We're just reviewing yesterday. According to Rabbi Meir, you went through the Heichal and straight to the Kodesh Kodashim. There was only 1 opening. According to the opinion of our Mishnah, there actually was a double opening over here, 2 curtains, and that's the way we understand the Mishnah. Okay, that is important. By the way, the Heichal itself was 40 amas. The Kodesh Kodashim itself was 20. Okay. Now let's see what the Gemara says. Amar Rab Nasan. Here we go. We're 3 lines from the top of Daf Nun Beis Amud Aleph. Amar Rab Nasan said. Okay, let's just get it bigger. Rab Nasan said, Amma Turaksin. The Amma Turaksin, remember, in the first space of Mikdash, there was no 2 curtains. There was actually a wall that was the thickness of an Amma. And it's called Turaksin. I think Turaksin is like a Greek word from trak, which means inner, sin means outer, like a thick wall of a thick Amma. And therefore that divided between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. And the Chachamim could not decipher Iklifnim, is the place of the Amma. If you would knock the wall down, that Amma, is it like part of the Kodesh Kodashim, Ikal Chutz, or is it part of the Heichal? So what Kedusha is that Amma Traksin? And therefore they made the curtains over there, because remember the second base of Mikdash, they made the building much higher. And therefore, instead of putting a wall there, they actually put 2 curtains there. So the Kohen had to walk through those 2 curtains to get right into the Kodesh Kodashim. Maskif lo Ravina. Ravina asked the question, my timer, what's the reason why the Chachamim could not decipher if it's part of the Kodesh Kodashim or is it part of the Heichal? Ilema, would you say, Bishum Deksiv, because it says in the Pasuk, B'habayis ashebona hamelech Shlomo Lashem Shishim Ama Orkoi ve'esrim Rachboi u'shloishim Ama Koimosoi. The length of the whole house, the building, was 60 amas, right? And I explained to you, 40 amas would have been the Heichal, 20 amas would have been the Kodesh Kodashim. Uksiv, it says in the Pasuk, Va'boyim ba'ama hoya abayis hu ha'heichal lefonoi. 40 amas was the Heichal, where the menorah, where the shulchan was, right? And then the Uksiv, then the Pasuk says there in Melachim, V'lefnei hadevir, in front of the wall. The vir means the wall that divided between the Kodesh, between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. That means in front of the wall was Esrim Arma Oirech, there was a 20 amma length, the Esrim Amma Roichev, and 20 amma width, the Esrim Amma Koimosoi. So, and a 20 amma height for the building. Okay, so it just says that in front of the wall, there was another 20 ammas. That was the whole Kodesh Kodashim. The whole go front to back of the Kodesh Kodashim was 20 ammas. And then you got 40 ammas of the 40 ammas is the Heichal. So 40 plus 20 is 60. And so that was the psukim. And when Chazal read those psukim, V'lo yad'inan, the Chazal didn't know amatraxim. The wall that divided, Shlomo Melech made a wall divide between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. Imahani Esrim, Imahani Arbon. Is it part of the Heichal? That means really the Heichal was only 19 ear space plus the wall, which makes it 20. Or could be the Imahani Arbon. I'm sorry, is it part of the Kodesh Kodashim? And that means there was only 19 in the Kodesh Kodashim plus the wall is 20. Or Vimahani Aboyim, it's from the 40. In other words, the Heichal itself was 39, and then the wall Abatraxim, which is part of the Heichal, was part of the 40. So really, there was only 39, and then one for the wall, which makes it 40. So again, Chazal did not know what that wall was. Is it part of the Heichal, or was it part of the Kodesh Kodashim? That was the Amatraxim in the first base of Mikdash, and that's why they required the Kohen Gadol to really go through that Amma to get really deep into the Kodesh Kodashim. So the Gemara says, why should they have a suffix if there was actually 39 Ammas ear space in the Heichal, or 19 Ammas ear space in the Kodesh Kodashim, depending on where you're going to put the Amatraxim? The Dilma, maybe Loi Mahani Esrim, V'loi Mahani Arboim. Maybe the airspace of the Kodesh Kodashim was 20, and the airspace of the Heichal was 40. And the Psukim, B'chalola Kachashiv, is only counting the airspace. B'koislim Loi Kachashiv. It's not counting the walls. So the wall is not part of that 20. It's not part of the 40. Now, Teda, I'm going to prove it to you that when we want to count walls, we don't, swallow it into the ear space. We actually, when we give the measurements of the Beis Hamikdash, we actually give you the measurements, ear space, then wall, then ear space, then wall. And that we see in the Mishnah. The Kol Heicha, the Choshev Kaisolim, Choshev Leili Dedei. Whenever the Mishnah counts walls, it actually counts it by itself. It counts the walls. It gives you the measurement of the wall. The Tanakh we learned in the Mishnah. I'm just going to show you the picture. Basically, it's very simple. Here's the Mishnah. Here's the Beis Hamikdash, right? Here's the Heichal. It's going to give you the measurement of this wall, number 1. Number 2 is called, by now you should know, it's called the Ulam. Number 3 is called the wall prior to the Heichal. And then number 4 will be the Heichal. Number 5 is going to be the wall, the 2 curtains. Number 6 is going to be the whole Kodesh Kodashim. 7 is the back wall. 8 was behind the Kodesh Kodashim, was a bunch of offices over here. And 9 is the wall that ends the Beis Hamikdash. Okay? So this is the ending wall. So now the Mishnah just gives you the list. So it even includes you, the Tanakh we learned in the Mishnah, HaHeichel Me'al Me'al. The whole Heichal, the whole Beis Hamikdash. This word Heichal means the whole Beis Hamikdash from beginning till end, including the Kodesh Kodashim, was 100 by 100. Barum Me'ah, a height of 100. Barum Me'ah, a height of 100. And then we list off. Kaisel Ulam, the wall, the beginning wall of the Ulam was Chamesh, was 5 amas. The Ulam itself, let's call that the antechamber, was Achas Asrei, was 11 amas. Kaisel Heichal Sheish, the wall of the Heichal was 6. The Arkoi Aboyim Amma, and then you go 40 amas is the airspace. Then the Amma Turaksin. Then you have another Amma for the 2 curtains. This is a Mishnah that's describing the second Beis Hamikdash. Then the Chaf Amma base Kachi Kadashim. Then you have an airspace of 20 Ammas of Kachi Kachim. Kaisel Heichal Sheish. Then the back wall of the Heichal behind the Kodesh Kodashim was a wall that was 6 Ammas. Then you have Atah Sheish. Then there was offices behind that wall, 6 Ammas. And the Kaisel Atah. And then the back final wall was another 5. So if you add up all these 5, you get from here, let's take a look at the picture, from number 1 till number 9, you get 100. But the bottom line is, in the Mishnayos, it actually counts thicknesses of walls. And it actually says that the Heichal had an ear space of 40 amas, and the Kodesh Kodashim had an ear space of 20 amas, not counting the Amatraxin, which is the ears, which is the wall of the 2 curtains in the second Beis Hamikdash. So Ella says the Gemara, and this is the final the version. What was the doubt? The Gemara knew that it's not counted in the airspace. There's actually 40 for the Heichal, another 20 for the Kodesh Kodashim. But they didn't know Kedush Shasayim. We know there's an Amma for the wall, but what is the holiness of that wall? Is it as holy as the Kodesh Kodashim? Or it's not as holy as the Kodesh Kodashim? Because think about it. If it's as holy as the Kodesh Kodashim, then b'diavad, if the Kohen Gadol did the Ketoris by the middle of the curtains, if he did the Kodesh Kodashim, if he did it right over here, while he's walking with the right over here. You see, when he's walking between the curtains, if he actually did the Ketoris right over here in this Amma, if you learn that this space has the same halachas as the Kodesh Kodashim, it would be kosher because he's doing the Ketoris in the Kodesh Kodashim. But that was the suffix. Maybe it's part of the Heichal. So Chachamim did not know, and therefore they required him to really enter into the Kodesh Kodashim, basically by where the Oren was, or where the dome of where the rock was there. Now, the Gemara concludes, V'hainu the Omer Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said that Boya Yosef Ish Haitzel, this person called Yosef from Haitzel, had a question on how to learn a pasuk, and based on that question, that was his question of what that wall is, because the pasuk says in the how do you read this pasuk? The pasuk says in Malachim, Udvir, the wall, B'soich Habayis Mepnima, that the wall that you had in the Beis Hamikdash that Shlomo built, Mepnima, inside that wall, that begins the Kodesh Kodashim. Heichin L'sita Shamas Araim Bris Hashem. That's where Shlomo Melech made the Kodesh Kodashim to put the Aron that of the covenant of Eibishter. So it seems that Mepnima, from the inside of the wall, that begins the Kodesh Kodashim, not the wall itself. Or you could learn Pshat that the word the Udvir B'soich Habayis Mepnima, stop. That the wall of the Beis Hamikdash, that wall that divided, that is the beginning of the inside of the Kodesh Kodashim. That's what the Gemara had. So we don't know how to read that pasuk. Ibayalu heicha ka'amakra. How do you read this pasuk? Do you read it Udvir B'soich Habayis Mipnima heichin l'sitin sham? That from the inside, from the wall, from the inside of the wall, and beyond, that was prepared to be the Kodesh Kodashim, but not including the wall. Oidilma, or maybe Hachikama. This is what Shlomo, that the pasuk in Malachim says. Udvir B'soich Habayis Mipnima. The wall in the house is the beginning of the Kodesh Kodashim. That's the inside of the Kodesh Kodashim. So the wall itself is the Kodesh Kodashim, and therefore the Kodesh Kodashim includes the wall. And therefore, in the second Beis Hamikdash, when they did not have a wall there, they actually had two curtains. The question was, what's the din between those two curtains? Is it part of the Heichal, or is it part of the Kodesh Kodashim? Again, I want to mention again that what we mentioned a couple of days ago. Every single day in davening, 3 times a day in davening, when you say Ritzei, v'hoshev es ha'avoda lidvir beisacha, you say it in Shemoneh Esrei, we are praying that God should return the Yom Kippur service that was behind the wall in your Beis Hamikdash. It seems that from the davening itself, that the wall is included into the Kodesh Kodashim. Because that's what we're saying. Or we're saying the pshat is that lidvir beisacha means return the servant that's going to be behind that wall. I don't know, but that's how you have to think about davening. But either way, you should always remember that whenever you're saying ritzei in Shemoneh Esrei, you're praying actually for the Yom Kippur service. So that ends the Gemara. I just want to tell you that the Gemara continues, and the Gemara said that this Yosef Ish Hutzel had a problem how to read a pasuk, right? The Gemara is going to say that's not how could Rabbi Yehuda Yosef have this problem in a pasuk in Malachim? Well, Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Isi ben Yehuda Omer. Isi ben Yehuda said. Now, Isi ben Yehuda is actually another name for Yosef Ish Hutzal. He was called by the same name, and he said only Chomish mikrais b'Torah ein lehem hechra. I don't know how to read 5 psukim in the Chumash. I don't know how to read. Only 5 psukim in the Chumash. We go to Nubeis on the Cheni. Se'es, Mushukadim, Mocha, Orer, Vakam. These are 5 different psukim. He had trouble reading because there's one word, you can read it to the beginning of the pasuk, or you can read it to the end of the pasuk. But only 5 psukim he had this suffix in. But Tanya, we learned in a brisa that who Yosef Ish Hutzel, Yosef Ish Hutzel had other nicknames. Who Yosef Habavli, who Yosef Isi ben Yehuda is the same person. Who Yosef Isi ben Gur Aryeh, who Isi ben Gabliel, who Isi ben Mahalal. So he had 5 different names. Maybe he opened 5 different companies and had to close them. I don't know. But he had 5 different names. But he said that he had that he only didn't know how to read 5 psukim in the Torah he had problems with. So how could you say that he had a problem in Navi and how to read a pasuk in Sefer Malachim describing the Beis Hamikdash? So the Gemara answers very simply. B'deraisa later in the Chumash reading Chamishi Chumash Torah, he had no others than those 5. But when learning Navi, he had a problem with a pasuk or 2. So that doesn't count in the 5 that he mentioned that he couldn't read. Because when he learned Navi, he had a problem. Now the Gemara continues, Uvderaisa Leika. He had no problem in the Chumash at all. I'll bring you a pasuk and look at this pasuk and you tell me how to read it. Well, Ika the boy Rav Chizda had a question, how do you read this pasuk? It says after Matan Torah, it says, Vayishlach es Nari b'nei Yisrael. The Nari b'nei Yisrael sent and to bring to them to bring to their domain animals. And the pasuk says, Vayalu oilers. They put up they brought up carbon oilers, and we're going to assume maybe it doesn't say what animals. The pasuk doesn't say what animals. So maybe Vayalu oilers means kvasim, sheep. And by Yizbuschu Zvachim Shlomim Parim, that's the other part of the pasuk, that they actually shechted Karbonai Shlomim. There, the Chumash says it was Parim, cows. So the question is, maybe Oilus was sheep, even though it doesn't say it in the pasuk, and Parim was only the Shlomim. Cows they only use for Shlomim. Or Dilmo, or maybe Edi Parim. Or maybe what does the pasuk mean? That the Oilus was Parim, the Shlomim were Parim. But both of them were Parim. So Parim goes back not only on Shlomim, but it also refers back to the Oilers, that the Oilers were cows, not sheep. So Reb Chizda had a question how to read this pasuk. So why didn't Yosef Ish Hutzel have a question on how to read, or Isi ben Yehuda, which is the same person, why didn't he have a question how to read this pasuk? After the Gemara, the truth is Rav Chizda Misapkale. Rav Chizda had this question how to read this pasuk. He didn't know how to read it. Isi ben Yehuda pshita le. According to Isi ben Yehuda, he had a way to read it. He either read it kavasim and then parim, or he thought parim or referred to both. But only Rav Chizda had this question. You could say that Isi ben Yehuda did not have this question. I will point out to you that if you read Chumash a lot, you'll find that certain words in a pasuk, it's hard to read it. Either goes back to the beginning of the pasuk, or it's the beginning of the second half of the pasuk. But what tells you generally how to read a pasuk is the trup. The trup, if there's like an esnachta, if you know how to lane, the esnachta really divides the pasuk and tells you stop over here, take a pause. So it'll tell you where the word belongs. In these psukim that they had a suffix, the question is why didn't they look at the trup? And it's possible that maybe the trup for that particular psukim that they had questions with was lost, or maybe if for a time being the trup was really lost and Ezra had to bring it back. So it's not clear if we have the exact trup the way it was, and that's why they still had these doubts by these psukim how to read it, because if we had the trup and the trup tells you where to pause, you would know for sure if it's the pasuk stops or it's one long sentence. Anyway, let's go.
Does everybody agree on the trop? I understand that we say it one way, Hasidim say it another way, Sardim say it another way, but do we all agree on all the trop?
Oh, so that excellent question. The tune of the singing is very different. You know, I learn sometimes like in Yiddish, and
Right.
some people like the German way, and some people like the
Right.
Finnish way, and some people.
And the Hasidim are different, and Yemenites are different, and even Syrians
Right.
completely different. But as the
But
trup
these
identical.
right. So the trup is identical, but I saw that when you're going to read any one of these psukim, this is se'es, is embraces, mushukadim, mochar, which is by Peshalach, Oror, and this pasuk v'kam, you have to read it in such a way that you're not going to pause, and it sounds both. So they'll tell you to read it both ways because the trup here was unclear. It was like you're going to have to make it make both right. Like we lay timcha ezecher and timcha ezecher amalek, right? We read it twice. So in these psukim, you have to read it in a double way because we don't know if the pasuk is a pause in the middle or not a pause in the middle. You can read the psukim here. I'll just show you in the top. Seis, let's say in Parshas Bereishis, God says to Cain, in Tativ, if you do tshuva, seis, you will be forgiven. And then the pasuk says, in Loi Seitev, you get a big avera. You're going to always have the sin. That's one way to read the pasuk. Or you could say, im Tativ, haloi im Tativ, God could say, if you did good, fine. But seis in Loi Seitev, you'll be carrying the avera, because seis can mean carrying the avera forever if you don't do good. So what does this pasuk seis go on? Is it going on the beginning of the pasuk, where the word seis will be forgiven? Or does seis go on the end of the pasuk, which means carrying? So these are psukim in the Chumash. You're right. We have trup, but in these trups, in these cases, you have to read it in to sound like both ways. I don't know how it's done. Let's do the Mishnah. Very, very nice Mishnah. Let's just show you the picture. And once you see the picture, it's easy. Very simple. Okay. Let's just do the pictures, and then you will do the Mishnah, and it's easy. Here's the picture. Again, he walked in through the curtain. It folded over. Notice how it's folded over. It's folded over, south, so he could enter in. Okay, you can see why it's folded. He's holding hot coals. He could easily start a fire. That's why they pinned it up, so to speak. Then he walked in the middle. Okay, then he walked in between the two curtains. Then when he got into the Kodesh Kodashim, he stood, with his left side to the curtains and kept walking towards, we'll call this stone the dome of the rock, right? Or in the base of Mikdash, in the first base of Mikdash, they had the Aron over here. But he kept walking this way. He didn't walk in a diagonal straight there. He had to walk this way. Okay, it's like a whole act over here, how he walked. And then after he walked, he got to the place, and then he put the ketoras on the fire. Okay, and then it smoked up. So let's read the Mishnah. Chachitzona, the outer curtain, hoise perufa min adarim, was folded from the south so he could enter. Upanemius, the inner curtain, was folded min atzafin to the north. I just want you to see that clearly. When he walked in, you see how the inner curtain of the Kodesh Kodashim, right? The inner curtain of the Kodesh Kodashim is actually folded inwards, so he could easily slip in. Then he was going from first he would go between the two curtains until he reached the north side. Then he reached the north side. Then he would turn his face towards the south, walking the other way. Again, he came in from the south, walked north. Then he came in from the north in the Kodesh Kodashim, walked back south. Mahalach, he would walk. Lismoili on the left side of the Kohen Gadol, once he's in the Kodesh Kodashim, im hapareiches, he was right near the curtain. And then that was his left side. And Achi Bigila Aron, until he reached the center of the room, which was the Aron. Okay, now this problem, the Aron, because the Mishnahs from Shnayos were written in the second base of Mikdash. In the second base of Mikdash, there was just a rock there. There was no Aron there. We're going to discuss that in the Gemara. Higila Aron, when he came to the Aron, he put the shovel between the two poles of the Aron. He piled the incense on top of the coals. And the whole house was full of smoke. Then Yotza, he went out. He walked out of the Kodesh Kedoshim, and he walked backwards. He walked in the direction that he came in. In other words, he walked backwards. He didn't turn his back and walk out the door. He walked like you walk out of a holy place, or you met a holy person. You walk in a backwards direction. And he prayed a short tefillah in the outer chamber. Rashi, what is he? That means he prayed he just did the Ketores. It's a great time to pray. And he prayed for the Parnosa of Klal Yisrael, the health of Klal Yisrael, right? So that's what he prayed for. Now, what did he pray? So Rashi says, B'bayis HaChitzayin is Beheichal, in the Heichal, which means where the menorah was, where the Shulchan was. But others learned shot that why do you call it a Bayis HaChitzayin? You should call it Heichal. So others learned that he actually went to the place in between the two curtains. And that makes sense. He actually prayed in between the two curtains, that tefillah. We say it on Yom Kippur, that this was the special prayer that the Kohen Gadol prayed after he did the Ketores. This, if there was a hard year, let it be a great year, whatever.
Oh, was that tefillah supposed to be in the Kodesh Kedoshim or in the
Oh,
Heichal?
so that's good. So why didn't he make it in the Kodesh Kedoshim? So the answer is that if you're in the Kodesh Kedoshim, we're afraid that he'll lose his concentration and then look around the Kodesh Kedoshim. So we didn't want that. So L'chatchila, of course, he should have made it in the Kodesh Kedoshim. That's where the prayer is. That's where you just did the mitzvah.
So we definitely consider in between the curtains to be Heichal.
That could be well, we could say that is Kodesh Kedoshim, but you can't see into the Kodesh Kedoshim. So it has the benefits of both, I would say. It has the benefit of being called that Amma, that in-between curtain called the Kodesh Kedoshim, yet if he loses his concentration in that short prayer, then he won't look around the Kodesh Kedoshim because he's blocked by the curtain. And this is why I'm learning Pshat this way, a little bit different than Rashi, but the other Mefarshim learn this way. Because the Torah, look what the Mishnah says. He didn't take his tefillah too long, maybe he took a minute or two. Why? Not to scare the Jewish people, because the Jewish people had experience where the Kohen Gadol did the service wrong and died in the Kodesh Kedoshim. So he had to come out alive. Now, if he did the prayer where the menorah is, in the Heichal, then why couldn't he lengthen his tefillah? Because you're allowed to stand between the ulam and the mizbeach while the Kohen Gadol is doing the service in Kodesh Kedoshim. You're not allowed to stand in the Heichal or the ulam, but just outside the building, you could just peek through into the building by the menorah, and you can see the Kohen Gadol praying. But if you're telling me that B'bayis HaChitzon means he was praying in between the two curtains, well, if he's in between the curtains, we want him to make it as short as possible and to come out, so not to scare the people. So now the Gemara just takes care of 1, 2 semantics. The Mai Askinan, what are we talking about in the Mishnah? What is the Mishnah talking about? If we're talking about the first base of Mikdash, so why are you talking about curtains? Mi have proiches? Was there a proiches, a curtain in the first base of Mikdash? There was a wall, amatraxin, as we learned today. Ella b'migdasheni. It would that the Mishnah is referring to the second base of Mikdash. Mi have a aron. Was there an aron there? There's no aron in the second base of Mikdash. So what Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Mishnigna's Aron. The Aron was hidden somewhere under the dome of the rock. And when the Aron was hidden, the Brisa says, Nigna's Imai, they sent into hiding to Tsenes Haman, a remnant of the mun that we ate in the Midbar, Utzloich Hashem and Amishcha, the anointing oil, the jug of anointing oil that Moshe Rabbeinu made, Umakle Shel Aharon Ushkedeho Furacha, the stick of Aharon, which had the walnuts and the flowers, almonds growing on it, right? That was the story of Korach. There was a special stick Aaron had, and also the Argos Shigri Plishtim Derle Israel. There was a treasure of gold that, for a short time in Tanakh, the Plishtim captured Al Aron, and when they decided they don't want to keep it anymore, they sent it back to Klal Yisrael on a cows and a wagon, and they sent along with it a special treasure box full of gold. So all these things were hidden when Yashiyahu, we're going to learn by Yashiyahu that one of the kings, the final kings of Yehuda before the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, he decided to send it into the hiding. And first of all, what was that box? When the Plishtim returned the Aron, they sent a box of gold along with it. So the Gemara says, Umi Gnozai, who put the Aron into hiding? Yashiyahu Gnozai. Yashiyahu HaMelech put it into hiding. Ma Rosh Gonzai. What made Yashiyahu hide the Aron? Rosh Shekasav, he saw a pasuk in Chumash that says, that one day we're going to all go into Golus, that Hashem is going to take us and the king into Golus. That's what it says in the Teichacha. So he knew that the first Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed, and he was worried that they were going to capture the Aron again. Amad Ugnozai. So he put it into a special hidden place. Shenema, because the pasuk says, now this hidden place is somewhere underneath that dome of the rock. There's a place there that Shlomo HaMelech put a hiding place for the Aron when he first built the Beis Hamikdash, somewhere there. And the pasuk says Yashiyahu knew about the hiding place, and some Leviim knew about it. So Yashiyahu told La Leviim Hanavinim, to the Leviim that understand and know where the hiding places are, the Chai Yisrael HaKadoshim Hashem. He said, put the Aron in the house. Now, obviously, the Aron was always in the house, but he was speaking code. Put it in the house means put it into the hidden chamber somewhere underneath the Beis Hamikdash somewhere. Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. That Shlomo, the son of David, the king of Israel, built a very clever hiding place for the Aron. Because because you're not carrying the Aron anymore. Go serve God, and he told the Leviim, go serve your people. In other words, he told them, first put the Aron away, continue the Beis Hamikdash is operational, but know that I'm doing this because I sense that it's going to be destroyed. And it's all part of this kasha. V'amar Ablazer said, how do you know that all these other things were hidden with it? We said it's the mon, the Shemen HaMishcha, the stick of Aharon, and the treasure. So the Gemara says, Asya Shama, Shama, Asya Doris, Doris, Asya Mishmeres, Mishmeres. There's Gzeres Shavis that make you say that whatever happened to the Aron happened to the Shemen HaMishcha, happened to the Mon, happened to the stick of Aharon. You have to look at the Pesukim. They have similar words. So we know when the Aron was put into hiding, everything else, all those other 5 things were also put into hiding as well. So here at this point ends the question. The question is very simple. How could our Mishnah tell us that the Kohen Gadol went to the place between where the Aron stood, Acha Megia La Aron? There was no, and we just established that the Mishnah is talking about the second Beis Hamikdash because it's talking about curtains. So then how could it talk about Aron? There was no Aron there anymore. It was put into hiding and never appeared during the second Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara answers, Lo'ila b'mikdash sheni. The base that we're referring to the second Beis Hamikdash. That's what the Mishnah. My Higila Aron. What does the Mishnah mean that the Kohen Gadol reached the Aron? It means Makoim Aron, the place where the Aron is, where the Aron used to be. I guess what he means to say is that somewhere under that rock, that's where the real Aron is. So that's what the Mishnah is referring to. So the Gemara says, how do you learn this part of the Mishnah? It says, Nosan esamachti, put the coals, the bein shnei abadim, between the 2 poles. Again, there is no 2 poles, there's just a rock there. So Ema, you say kibein shnei abadim. You put it in the space between the 2 poles. So I guess in the Kohen Gadol's imagination, he has to calculate exactly where the Aron stood, where the 2 poles of the Aron used to jut out, and exactly at that point, at that place, at that center point, he would put the coals and then do the Keturah service. So that ends the share. We just did
Bernard, I have a quick question. How long did the Kehila wait until the Kohen Gadol got out? What if, God forbid, he was nifter or
didn't he have a rope around his waist?
I don't know if he had a rope around his waist, but I guess we're going to learn more about what happened.
That's what I heard.
But if he died in the Kodesh Kodashim who can go in and get him out?
Right.
I think he did have some type of rope.
I
thought
believe he had a
saw.
rope so that if he died, they could pull his
They-
body out without entering
exactly.
Kadosh Kadosh.
Right.
Right,
So
right.
how, well, right. Right.
Yeah, there's
Now,
no other way. Who's gonna go? You couldn't, who else could go in there? No one else
Right.
could go in there.
No
The
one else
Chumash,
can
when
go in.
Nadav and Avihu died, the Chumash says that the other two kids, the cousins, took a long stick to try to get
Mhm.
their bodies out.
Right.
Didn't we learn something about when they cleaned it, someone had to be lowered from on top in or
Right.
something like
No,
that?
yes, from
Yeah,
the
they couldn't
top.
go on the floor itself.
Right, they couldn't go
Right,
on the floor.
but that
they-
was the Kodesh Kodashim,
yes, but they fixed
and it
the
was
insult.
open, it was open on the top.
It was open on the top. They came in like an elevator shaft.
So then I
Mhm.
guess they could have theoretically done that too for a
Yes.
nifter
Yeah.
Kohen Gadol.
Right, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's interesting. I was just thinking it depends who the Kohen Gadol was. If he was from the Young Israel Ashari, they probably gave him 3 minutes. If he came from the yeshiva world, they probably gave him 10 minutes. They compare it to the Shemoneh Esrei.
For the next one, we'll have cell phones.
Right,
Right.
right.
Okay. Very
All
good.
right,
Interesting.
Shkoyach.
Gemara. It gets very interesting, and that's it. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
that's good enough.
Shkoyach.
Same time
Good
tomorrow.
enough.